Good morning, good afternoon, and of course, good evening, depending on when you're watching this, or indeed where in the world you are currently. However, as this week's video title suggests, this is a complete reality check. Now for me, that reality check normally comes on leg day at the gym, interestingly where I was earlier today, and I did indeed limp bravely from the gym, fully aware that I'm perhaps not as young and as nubile, I know it's hard to believe, as I perhaps used to be. However, it does give me a good segue into this week's video, which is indeed an audiophile reality check. So what is the context of this and why did I feel it necessary to have a video dedicated to this and this alone? Well, quite simply, those of you who have watched the last two videos that we have produced, you would see that we were doing some comparisons on what is essentially entry-level all-in-one systems and how they perform in relation to each other. Now in this test, you will remember that I waxed lyrical about the Bluesound power node, the N330, and there is a follow-up video to come on that versus the newer N332 to see if the extra power or indeed any of the enhancements they've made is indeed noticeable. Now the interesting part of this process is that during this test, I thought that the Bluesound was giving me a true sense of a flavour of what is achievable in high-end audio terms. Now, given this is a device that retails for under £1,000, how far in reality would it be able to challenge a hierarchy of more expensive, say, separates? So my task this week was to what some might consider a very David and Goliath scenario. So in the blue corner, we have the Electrocompaniet ECi80D. It's an integrated amplifier with a built-in DAC and also Bluetooth, so you can stream using that. Now, it's in relative terms, it's a compact-ish hi-fi component. It's standard width, but it's actually quite shallow compared to others, which many of you might find an advantage, particularly where depth space is at a premium. And it retails at just over £3,000. Now, that's not quite where I stopped. I then thought, okay, whilst I can stream Bluetooth into this, it's not really the ideal setup. So I decided to connect an external streamer, and rather than go full Monty Volumio, I chose the Rivo as opposed to the Rivo Plus, and trying to keep pricing relatively sensible. So I'll bring up the combined retail price of these two devices on screen right now. For those of you interested, the Electrocompaniet uses Texas Instruments, it's the 1768 from memory. If I'm wrong, I will no doubt correct myself immediately with the text on screen. But it is a 24-bit 192 kilohertz, no USB input. It has got coaxial and optical only. Now, the Volumio does give either of those options as an output, so I chose coaxial. Now, here's another reality check. We get hung up on very high spec DACs, and for the main purposes of listening and generally for our usual type of listening, and for me personally that would be Cobuzz, would mean that the maximum resolution would be 24:192, which marries perfectly with the Electrocompaniet's DAC input. So I set about the task of comparison. So I listened again to the Bluesound. I spent some time really playing tracks that I'm familiar with. I'll bring up some of these tracks on screen so you can see the variety of genre and music type. And use some of the tracks I'd used previously to compare the three all-in-ones. I then did the same comparison using the Volumio's own app into the ECi80D and of course the Texas Instruments DAC, which if you read online about this DAC, you will read that it is regarded as a very analog sounding, perhaps erring on the warm side of neutral sonic presentation. So did the Bluesound give the Electrocompaniet a run for its money? No, it didn't. And whilst that's a very blunt response, perhaps more blunt than you're used to hearing from me, the gap was considerable. I would go as far as to say the gap is larger than the depth of the Marianas Trench, which is exceptionally deep, albeit that's not a gap, but if you turned it on its side, technically it would be. And yeah, it's... So let me just bring this into context. So my notes from listening were the Bluesound in context with its peer group is exceptional. There is no two ways about it. If you have the extra budget up to the £900 category, I have not heard a better device than the Bluesound. However, when I played the Electrocompaniet and within the first few bars of Sanson Dance Macabre, it was apparent that this was on an entirely different level. Not even close. I mean, the closeness is simply they played the same track. Now what this does, and in a good way, it highlights the reality check of there is no magic bullet. Now some devices will perform better than their peer group, that's normal. But then better by whose standard or whose measurement, and that is a very key aspect of our hobby. What I prefer, you may not, and of course the opposite is also true. However, in pure analytical analysis of the sound, very clearly the areas where the Electrocompaniet absolutely trumped the Bluesound were on things like high frequency detail, the texture. In fact, on the Blue Nile opening track from the Hats album, Over the Hillside, which I've used before, this track has got some very clean percussion that is part of the whole atmosphere of that track. And on the Bluesound, compared to the two other devices, the Eversolo and the WiiM, it trumped them. But now the Bluesound, unfortunately, is taking quite a beating here in every respect. And here the Electrocompaniet Volumio combination was stellar. I mean, it was absolutely engaging. The atmosphere of the track was very audible right from the get-go. And the other elements were separation and things like low frequency separation. There's certain tracks that I used that where the low frequency part in isolation on the Bluesound I thought was okay. Suddenly I realized switching to, that's easy for you to say, me to say, switching to the ECi80, it made the Bluesound sound muddy in some of the low frequency separation. And I found this theme continued across multiple tracks. So in a very good way, if you have got the extra budget to buy something like the Electrocompaniet, which actually, in my opinion, is already one of the best amplifiers in its class. Now, some people we're very specification driven, and we tend to look at spec sheets, we look at DAC sample rates, we look at features that the amplifier we're buying has. And for some, I completely understand having an all-in-one, and there's some very expensive all-in-ones you can have too, are what we want purely for convenience, and sometimes it's just simply a case of that's the space I have available. However, if you're not in that camp, then the ECi80D is already, in my opinion, the best in class. Now, it doesn't have some of the full feature sets that some amplifiers have, but what it has is musicality. And ultimately, when we sit and listen, it's the engagement that we have to the sound that makes us want to listen to more music. And with this combination, I found myself, quite honestly, early hours, and in fact, yeah, I'll tell you, it was 3 a.m. before I finally dragged myself off to bed. A glass of wine, some great music, and I literally stopped doing the analysis, which can become analysis paralysis, which I know is an overused expression. And here's the thing.
Here's the thing.
Here's the thing.
Now here's the thing.
Any amplifier and streamer combination that can have me honestly not wanting to go to my bed and sat there at 3 a.m. still playing music tells a story bigger than the components that were used in the first place. It was honestly just such an engaging experience that I genuinely did not want it to end. So to come right back to the title of this video, the reality check is, and I know I'm repeating myself here, there is no unicorn or magic bullet that I have heard thus far. I will plead the fifth on perhaps the future of where that might go. However, right now as I talk to you, I have not heard what that device would be that would challenge such a well-engineered, a device with a history behind it that is enviable from many manufacturers' perspectives. Electrocompaniet, in my opinion, build currently some of the best amplification you can currently buy in the world at any price. And this amplifier, which is technically their entry-level offering, will worry and indeed put a worrisome frown on the faces of many more expensive opposing manufacturers' amplifiers. And even with the 24192 DAC limitation, which I don't see as a limitation actually, I see it as a musical gateway to why I was up till 3 a.m. still wanting to play another track and another track and another track, and genuinely unable to drag myself away. So, a very different kind of video this week, where we're talking about the realities of, are you getting what you pay for? And I'm very pleased to say in this context, yes, you absolutely are. Another aspect, I guess, which I find a very fulfilling part of what I personally do in this business is dealing with the inquiries that, as a business, we are so grateful to have from you watching this video. And I would encourage you, if you are even contemplating an upgrade or even just want some general system advice, here's my direct email. Drop me a line, really challenge me, give me something that's a real challenge. I love looking at and being, witness to how you've assembled the system, what you like about it, what it is you hope to improve, the kind of music you listen to, how it makes you feel. Because it is about feeling something, really. Music gets our emotions flowing one way or another. It can be, oh my God, that's terrible, turn that off. Or it can be, oh wow, hang on a minute. That's great, that's amazing. So I want to give you as many of those amazing moments as I possibly can. So drop me a direct email and let's open a dialogue. Let's see if I can guide you to a path where you yourself are up till 3 a.m, hopefully not annoying your neighbours with your musical choices, but unable to drag yourself away from your system, because that that is where it's at. That is the end game. That's what we all want to have. And I see it as an absolute privilege if you allow me in to your own world of audio. So it would be appreciated. And another appreciation I would greatly extol is that if you have enjoyed watching this video, if you're looking forward to more in the future, please like and subscribe and turn on notifications. It really does mean a lot to us. We're a small family business. We've got a really passionate and dedicated team here. And I love the fact that they share the same passion for audio as I do myself. In the coming weeks, we will be looking at other brands. Luxman is a brand that, again, is very close to my heart. We've got the Bristol Hi-Fi show coming up, and we will have a dedicated video for that specifically. If you're also someone that likes to buy a bargain, then subscribe to our newsletter. There are offers in there that you will never see publicly advertised, and you get first chance to buy some of our best part exchanges before, again, they're even advertised anywhere else. In the description below, there will be a link that will allow you to subscribe. So just do it anyway. What have you got to lose? It's a fortnightly newsletter. There's always some great things in there. And finally, thank you so much for watching this week. And as always, have a great week listening to music, and I will see you very soon.